Hi guys, today we're going to be doing something that I did a while back, and I remember in that video, the last time I did this, I ranked my last 10 palettes that I bought, and I said in that video that I would keep doing that, but it turns out that I've kind of let it, bundle up a little bit, and we got more than 10 palettes to rank, so let me just kind of show you the pile that we are working with today. So I actually have 15 palettes here. This is not the order in which I have ranked these palettes. But I need to sit down and actually rank them after, but I thought I would just kind of film the intro first and show you the pile so that you know what we have to work with without spoiling the order in which these are ranked. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. I am already just like terrified looking at these because there are so many palettes that are going to be so close in rankings that this is going to be really hard. But before we get into the ranking, I actually have something that I am so excited about to share with you guys because, okay, so a little backtracking here, but I post a lot of stuff on my community page here on YouTube. If you aren't already getting notifications for my channel, you might want to turn those on so you don't miss my community posts, because I do a lot of polls and stuff on there. And so I want to say it's been a couple of months now. I asked you guys if you would be interested in me doing some kind of merch, and a lot of you said yes. And to me, merch is like very strange, not something that I ever thought I would be able to do, but it's always something that I kind of wanted to do. So a lot of you guys said that you wanted me to do brush holders, and at first I was like, how in the world am I supposed to do that? Like, I can't make that stuff myself. I can't just go on Teespring and order brush holders. Like, that is kind of like, it's never gonna happen. I wanted to make a t-shirt, but it turns out that this beautiful Etsy seller actually reached out to me on Instagram, and they are making brush holders. So I actually have a collaboration with them on some brush holders that I want to show you guys that you are going to be able to buy, and I am so excited. So basically these brush holders are made by a brand or a Etsy seller called Popstash. So let me just like show you what they look like, because I feel like that is kind of important. So they come in a set of 3, which this is the set that he has made and he sent to me so I could show you guys. So basically on here it says face, eyes, and then the last one says be fearless. And the reason why I wanted those saying, or that saying in particular, on one of my brush holders is because I feel like that's very much my motto when it comes to doing makeup. Like, I don't want anybody to be afraid to like try something new. Don't be scared to wear colors. Don't be scared to do something that a lot of people aren't doing and that maybe makes you a little bit uncomfortable. But let me just tell you, like, as soon as I started experimenting more with my makeup, I've never been more confident, and I feel better about myself when I'm out and about than when I'm wearing like crazy makeup. There's something about makeup that is so transformative and just makes you feel good and confident in yourself, at least for me. So be fearless is very much something that I believe in. And these holders are made out of wood. They are also handmade, which is so cool. And so like I was saying before, that these are the ones that I came up with, but all of these are very customizable. So if you go on the site, you will be able to write whatever it is that you want on these holders. So if you wanted to get one, for example, that says brows, you wanted to get one for your mascaras, whatever it is, you can be able to customize it yourself to get the writings on these the way that you want it to be. But this is just a set that, I made for the site. These are customized for me so that if you wanted to get something that I have kind of put my, not name on, but something that I have helped create, then this set would probably be the one that you would want to buy. But if you're not interested in like this set in particular, you can use my code Annette10, which is how I'm going to make a small profit from, this collab. It's just from you using my code. So that code is going to work on everything on the site, not just this set. And I also just wanted to point out that you see the dots on these. I wanted there to be dots on because you guys know how much I love doing dots on my eyes, because I just think that is super fun and such a fun touch. So that's basically going to be the brush set. So this is going to retail for $16, and they ship out of Israel, and the shipping is honestly not that bad at all. I looked up how much it would be to have it shipped to me, and it would cost $5.50. And then if you spend over $35 on the site, shipping is free worldwide. So I think that is awesome. So yeah, I am so excited. If you want to know more information, everything will be linked and listed down in the description box. And I think we should just get into today's video. So let's go ahead and rank all of these palettes now. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin with this. So I do want to just kind of preface that the way that I'm ranking this isn't necessarily based on performance of the palette. It could be that I'm ranking a palette that quality wise is really good, very low, just because maybe there's something about the color story that I don't necessarily like. Maybe I just you know, just didn't get that good of an impression on the palette as a whole. This is just like my opinion. It doesn't mean that the palette that is ranked up top is going to be the best palette. It's just a palette that inspires me the most and that I had the most fun with playing with. And some of these palettes I've only used once, so again, it doesn't necessarily have to be like performance based. This is just where these palettes stand for me at this very moment. So I'm going to start on my bottom and then we're going to work our way to the top. So the bottom palette in this pile is, actually, let me say this before we get into it. So I did have the Natasha Denona Mini Tropic palette. I ended up returning that, so that is not in this list. I only wanted to include palettes that I actually have here, and I also have the Juvia's Place Fumi collab. And since that's not really an eyeshadow palette, I didn't want to include it in this video since it's more of like a multi-use face eye palette kind of thing. So it's not really an eyeshadow palette as well. So those two palettes are not going to be on this list, so let's just start. So on the bottom I have the Amy Hart's Beauty Cosmetics My Beach is Better palette. So this is what the palette looks like. I honestly like the color story of this palette more than I like the color story of a lot of the other palettes, but there's just something about this palette. I think it's the packaging. The packaging is really cheap. Some of these shadows, you know, fall out. It's just not ideal, so I don't ever reach for this. And like I said, I think the quality of the shadows themselves and the color story is okay, but like I'm just so put off by the packaging of this and stuff, and yeah, there's just something about this palette that just doesn't do it for me. So in the number 14 spot, this is a palette that actually quality-wise I think is really good, and this is the Daydream palette. This was sent to me by Alter Ego. This is what it looks like. Obviously, this is not my kind of color story. It's just a little bit too neutral for me. It also has some pressed glitters in it, and it's just not really my thing. Like, I really appreciate them sending this to me, and I'm happy I was able to show it to you because I know a lot of you are into, you know, somewhat neutral palettes, and I do think this is a really good palette if that is the kind of color story that you like. But for me, this palette just didn't do it for me, so it's going to end up as the number 14th palette on this list. So moving right on to number 13, we have the Colorpop Honey palette. The reason why this ended up very low on my list is because it's just not a standalone palette for me. This is not very versatile. It also has a pressed glitter. I can't stand pressed glitters, so there's just nothing that's going to make me reach for only using this palette, you know, as a standalone kind of look. Like, I just don't really ever see myself doing that. It's one of those that I kind of bought because I feel like I'm collecting these at this point because I have all of them and I wanted to have the yellow one as well. So, you know, I think the quality of it is totally acceptable. I think it's pretty good, and I don't know, it's just not that exciting. It's a monochromatic yellow palette. So I'm totally going to lose track of the numbers here, but I think this is going to be number 12. So the number 12 on my list is going to be the OMFG Cosmetics Pretty in Pastel palette. There was nothing wrong with this palette. I quite liked it. I didn't think the quality was like amazing, but it also wasn't bad. The thing I don't like about this, again, I'm going to be rating this as a standalone palette, and the thing about this is that it's very soft, it's very subtle. You're not going to get any like very intense looks with this just because the mattes in this palette are very soft, and so I just don't see myself really ever reaching for this as a standalone palette because I like to have more depth in my palettes, and I also don't think that the shimmer formula in this is amazing. I think it's okay, but I think this palette as a whole is just okay. Like, I don't think it's great, and the color story is just not something that I normally reach for a lot. I don't do a lot of very soft pastel-y type looks because I feel like on my eye shape it's way more flattering to have more depth in my crease, and this palette just doesn't do that for me. So for number 11, we actually have another Colorpop palette, and this is the Orange You Glad palette. Now the reason why these palettes end up so low on my list is simply because it's a monochromatic palette. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of variety, there's not a lot of things you can really do with this palette, and so it just ends up being a palette that is just not that versatile. Again, it's more of a collector items for me. I have nothing against the quality of this palette. I think that it performed really well when I used it, and I'm really happy I have it. It's just not that exciting, you know? Next is a palette that I actually thought when I first saw it that it was going to end up on the bottom of my list, but it ended up climbing a little bit because I was pleasantly surprised by this palette, and it's the Color Drain, very cute palette. I didn't buy this. I ended up getting it in my mystery bag from their site that I ordered. And I actually quite like the shades in this palette. I think the quality of this is really good, but the color story, again, is just very limiting. There's not a lot of looks I can do with this, and so for that reason alone, I'm going to rate this pretty low, because all of the other palettes that I have here have a lot more that you can do with them, and that's what makes a palette interesting to me. There's something about having a palette with a very unique color story that kind of challenges me and makes me think out of the box. That's what makes me excited about palettes. So this is going to end up in the, what is this, 11 or 10? I don't know, I've already lost track. And for the number 9 spot is going to be the Minibreaker palette by Jeffree Star. Again, there's nothing wrong with like the formula of this palette. I don't think there's anything bad about this. This is just not really my color scheme per se. I don't hate this. It's just I don't reach for oranges a whole lot, and I also don't really like some of the other colors in this palette. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of like these kind of sheer duochrome topper shades, and I also felt like this was kind of lackluster. And also this brown down here is just kind of meh. I don't know, it's just kind of boring. This palette doesn't really do it for me. I feel like it's lacking a little bit of just something else in the shimmers. I wish that some of these shimmers were a little bit different, and yeah, it's not a perfect 9-pan palette for me. So moving into the number 8 spot, this is actually the palette that I just finished filming with, and it's the new Jeffree Star X Morphe palette. I mean, I had fun playing with this palette, you know? Like, it has a lot to offer. I feel like I can get a lot of different looks out of this, which, I mean, I did because I did 10 looks. But, like, I don't really hate this palette. It's just a little bit too big for my liking, and I definitely feel like I have other palettes that inspire me more than this. But, like I said, I did have fun with this. It's just an okay palette, but since I did end up doing 10 looks with it, I feel like the palettes that I end up doing 10 looks with, I just have more of a connection with because I've spent more time with them. That probably sounds really stupid, but that's why this palette ended up so kind of high up on my list, even though I didn't necessarily give it the best review. But again, I don't think it's a bad palette, it's just an okay palette. So we are about halfway there. We have 7 palettes to go. So next up, this is like a tough choice. It's basically a toss-up between the palette I have in my hands and another palette here. So I think I'm gonna go with this in the number 7 spot, and this is the Totally Botany palette. I've only used this once. This is by Cosmetics. I think the color story in this is absolutely beautiful. I didn't have any issues with this really, except for the shade here getting hard pan when I used it. I need to just play with this more. I think that's why I don't really know where to put this palette yet, because I haven't made up my mind about it. I still think it's a very beautiful palette and I'm very inspired looking at it, but I also just feel like I haven't quite made up my mind about this because I need more time with this. So in the number 6 spot is also going to be another Jeffree Star palette, and this is the Jawbreaker palette. This I also did 10 looks with because I'm crazy. I don't know why I do that to myself, but it's kind of fun to like torture myself by spending so much time editing 10 looks. If you don't make videos, you don't know what I mean, but it's very satisfying when you're like kind of done with a big project. So that's the main reason why I like doing those 10 look videos, because I just feel so accomplished when I'm done with them. So if you haven't seen this palette, this is what it looks like. It's beautiful. I love the colors in here. I had so much fun playing with this palette. I even said in my 10 look video that if that video got 5,000 likes, I would do another 10 looks, and that video was at like 4,300 likes or something like that. So I mean, maybe in a year I'm gonna have to pull this out again and do another 10 looks, but I wouldn't mind that because I quite like this palette. I had a lot of fun with this palette. I thought that the quality of this palette was pretty good. There was still some duds in here that, you know, weren't perfect, but I feel like you can say that about most palettes. So I did like this palette a lot, and that's why it ended up pretty high on my list. But because it's so big and because I have so many options of looks to do with that palette, it just couldn't quite make it to the top because it's not inspiring enough to me that I wanted to put it in the like top 5. So let's move into the top 5 now, and this is actually a palette that I just put up a video with, and this is the Sugarpill mini fun size palette. I just think that this palette is so cute. Like, even though I've only played with it once, even though it's an all matte palette, I don't really ever use all matte palettes. I just think that the cat itself makes it in the top 5. Like, I said this to a couple of my friends that if someone came out with a palette with a cat on it and it was neutral, I'd probably buy it because it had a cat on it. So, I mean, the packaging alone in this just made it into the top 5, and the fact that I really enjoyed playing with this the one time that I did play with it, it just deserves to be in the top 5 because it's so cute and it's just so small and I just want to cuddle with it, and I just love this palette. So in the number 4 spot, we have a Calais Dose makeup palette, and this is the Electro Turquoise palette. You guys know how much I love Calais Dose. I just think that these palettes are amazing. Even in my last video where I ranked my last 10 palettes, the Futurism, like all the palettes in the Futurism collection ended up very high up on the list. And that is also the case in this video. So this is what the palette looks like. I have made videos with this palette. I will link that in the corner if you want to check that out. But I just think that it's such a fun color story for being only 6 shadows, and it makes me kind of think and go, what can I do with this that's not very obvious? And I like that. I like the challenge of not really knowing exactly what to do with a palette and trying to make it something unique and special. And I just love the formula of Calais Dose. I love these new glitter kind of sparkly shimmer shadows. I think they are so stunning. And I love the packaging. I love everything about these palettes, and this needed to be high up on my list. In the 3rd spot is one that I felt like had potential to be my top palette for a very long time, and I still am very torn between the 3 that I do have in my top 3, but this is the Whale Song palette by Menagerie Cosmetics. This ended up being my 3rd spot palette. It definitely could have ended up on top, like I said, but I don't know. I just felt like in this moment I am more drawn to the other 2 palettes that I have in front of me right now, and if I were to do a look with something, it would be with one of those 2. And I think it's just because I'm a little bit not burnt out on like green and blue palettes, but I've just been playing so much with green and blue lately that having something else is kind of refreshing, and so that's probably why this palette didn't end up like on top. But I love this palette. I don't have any complaints about this palette. I think the color story is beautiful. I think the formula is beautiful. I mean, these shimmer shades down here are just, they're just everything. And I will link the video that I've done with these palettes. I mean, just look at that. I'll link the video that I've done with this palette up in the corner too. I will try to link more videos down in the description box. I mean, I've done videos with all of these. If there's anything you wonder if I have on my channel or not, just search on my video page. You can click on that little magnifying glass and you can type in whatever, you know, brand or palette that you are curious about, and it should show up if I have it on my channel. It's just going to be a lot to link like 20 videos down in the description box because I've made so many videos on all of these palettes. So I'll link a few up there, and then the rest you can just kind of search for if you want to see them. Okay, so let's move into the top 2 now. I'm still kind of scratching my head here and not really knowing which one to put on top because this is very, very hard. But I think I made up my mind. This is so tough, you guys. I think the number 2 spot is going to be the other Calais Dose palette. So this is the Neon palette. It's called the VR Neon. I'm pretty sure this is what the palette looks like. I think this is stunning. These are the best neon shadows I have in my collection. Again, I just think that this kind of glittery, shimmery new formula that they have is absolutely insane. I think it's so pretty. I think this was so easy to work with. I just love this. I love it so much that it hurts me to not put it on top, but actually the palette that is going to be on top this time is the palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today, or at least mostly on my eyes today, and it's the Glaminatrix Sandra Rose palette. I've mentioned this a few times, but I actually helped make the color story for this palette, so that's probably why I like it so much, because I find this color story to be extremely interesting and exciting and unique and different, and it just makes me want to play with it. And having played with it, I think the formula is amazing. I had so much fun playing with this. I just want to sit down and play more and create more looks with this palette, and it just makes me happy to look at. So, I mean, if something makes me this happy, I feel like it just deserves to be the number 1 spot, even if I might not have like the best reasons for why it ended up on top. It just had to be on top. And so those are going to be all of my palettes, or new palettes, ranked. So I will try to do this again when I bought another 10, but sometimes stuff just happens and it bundles up a little bit, and then I also want to make sure that I filmed with everything that I'm going to rank before I rank them, obviously, because otherwise I can't rank them. So it just ended up being 15 this time, but that's totally okay. And so yeah, don't forget to check out my collab with the brush holder. Everything will be listed down below in the description box. Like I said, these are available now as this video is going up. I am so excited. I hope you guys love them as much as I do. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you want to see some other content, other ranking videos, maybe I'll pop some up on the screen. And if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.